So it's taken about a year to get to this point where I was able to tell my story. I've been battling the enemy through ups and downs, trying to overcome the thoughts that this story could never bring God and His kingdom any glory. He continuously made me feel like it had no purpose, but the Lord had something else to say. So I sit before you today and I'll let you know a little bit about myself, but of course, most important, I want you to know how the Lord has worked in my life. In order to let you know how the Lord's glory has trumped over my trials, I have to tell you a little bit about myself before Jesus. I was raised in church, and even though I know it wasn't intentional, my family made the Lord seem like He was domineering, like He was this power that I just needed to obey. I never knew that He was a father that was yearning to have a relationship with me. When I was 15, I experienced loss for the first time in my life. I mean, real loss. We lost my stepmom, shockingly, unexpectedly. She was 29 years old and she had a bad ventricle in her heart. The biggest part of that grieving process for me was watching my dad change because of grief. I was hurting and I turned to all these negative ways to deal with this hole in my chest, and I started covering it up with anything that I could to temporarily cover that hurt. And that really truly was the beginning of a dark road for me, whether it was drugs or sex or alcohol or whatever would cloud it for just a moment. And I continued on that path for such a long time, and probably until age 21, when I met my husband. We started coming to Harvest, and I felt like I was really actually learning what it meant to be in relationship with the Lord. I got saved, I got baptized, and everything was just great. It was great for that time being. But what I didn't realize is, even though I was taking those steps in the right direction, I still wasn't really seeking a true relationship with the Lord. And when tragedy struck again and my husband left me, I did exactly what I did the first time, and I turned right back into those things of the world that could never fill me. I picked up everything I owned and I ran as far as I could. I had this really bad habit of running from my problems rather than putting them at the feet of the Lord. So I ran to Texas as far as I could from everything I know, and I was by myself. And during that time of being by myself, that hole in my heart and in my soul, it just kept growing and kept growing. And no matter what, I would just continue to put things of this world into it, doing drugs, drinking. Like, I would try and make money in ways that no woman should ever make money. And I never saw myself as worthy of anything. Despite my actions, I was blessed in the middle of my mess whenever I met my boyfriend, Joshua. Even though I was a disaster, it was like he loved me right in the midst of that mess. And it started to bring me to a point where I wanted to do better. And as I began to do better, all was pretty well until I went through something that was earth-shattering. I had a gentleman who worked for me that began stalking me. And even after they caught him and he was in jail, I was just overran by this fear. I mean, the fear was so heavy, it was like it was pouring off the walls. And keep in mind, not only was this fear overtaking me, I hadn't fully let go of my addictions yet. And when you mix those two things, they don't go well together. And I remember it being like 4 a.m. in the morning, And I hadn't slept in 3 days. And I had just gotten to this point where everything throughout my life was just hitting me at once. Like everything that I had ever been through and everything that I had experienced that had created this hole in my chest was just overwhelming me at this point. And I was so emotional. I mean, just sobbing, crocodile tears in my bed, wanting so badly to have peace, wanting so badly to just fall asleep, even if it meant that I never woke up again. So in that moment, when I had no hope, I turned to Jesus and I said, "Take this from me. Please save me." And it was like in that moment, he was right here. And it's like he had been there the entire time. And it felt like he just wrapped me up. And I could literally feel his arms around me in that moment. And for the first time in 3 days, I fell asleep. When I woke up that next morning, it was like the whole world was brighter. I mean, colors of the grass and the sky were just so vibrant. It's like I had woken up from this sleep I had been in for over 20 years. So I grabbed my Bible and I went into the living room and I started to dig into it for the first time in so long. And we were fixing to move back to Tennessee, Joshua and I was fixing to start school. I had no idea how I was gonna make all that work, and I had that fear of being able to provide, and I was done making money in ways that I shouldn't. And I had handed that to the Lord the night before. I told him I didn't want to do that anymore, and I wanted to live my life for him, and that didn't match up with that. So as I'm sitting there reading my Bible, Joshua comes in and he sits down next to me and he says, "When we move back to Tennessee and you start school, I want you to just focus on going to school, find you a job that works with school, and get yourself set up on your feet. And until you do that, I'm gonna handle your bills. I'm gonna take care of it until you're ready to handle it yourself." And it was like, in that moment, the Lord was speaking directly to me saying, "I told you I was gonna handle this. I told you I was going to provide for you. You have no reason to fear. Just trust me." So I began on this journey of trusting the Lord. And he delivered me back here. He brought me back to Tennessee with my family. And he just continues to provide for me. And he continues to let me live without fear. And I continue building this trusting relationship with him. I mean, ever since the moment that I met him face to face and I surrendered completely to him, I had been undergoing this transformation. I mean, even my desires in the way I dress and the activities I do and my extra time, all of those things were changing, and I just had this desire and eagerness to follow the Lord. Ever since the day of my salvation, it's like everything from my past just vanished. My addiction, my struggle with fear, PTSD, hyperactivity, just all of those things that I struggled with. I didn't have those issues. Jesus had taken that from me. And I stand before you today and I tell you that he's solely responsible for my 2 years in recovery. And he's solely responsible for the relationship that I have that is focused on the Lord with Joshua. And there's relationships with my family that are being restored. And I'm letting go of things that I've held on to for years. Pain and grief and trauma. I don't hold those things anymore because I don't have to. And not only has he taken those things from me, but he has blessed me and graciously given me things that I never thought that I deserved. I'm on the path to graduate college. I'm working in the Emmaus community, which I love so much. That is such a gift from the Lord. And I'm actively working in my church, Harvest. I feel like I was that lost sheep just wandering around you know, and Jesus said, hold on, guys, I gotta go get this girl. That's exactly what he did. He just grabbed me up and he took me home. And I just want you to know, as you sit there today and you hear this message, if you don't grab anything else from this, I want you to understand one thing, that you are never too far gone. The only thing you have to do is hand it over to Jesus. It's exactly what I did in my moment of salvation. I said, please take this from me. I am a sinner in need of a Savior. Please, Lord, please be my Savior. He is waiting to wrap you in His arms. He is waiting to transform you. He is waiting to show you how much He loves you. And He wants to pour out His grace and His mercy onto your life. All you have to do is open the door and say yes.